To the North Shore Radio Club's first meeting for 2026. As always, I'd like to ask if we have any first-time visitors. If as you, so you can.
We lost your audio.
No, it looks like nobody's there. Okay.
Oh, okay.
In that case, do we have any new hams or license upgrades tonight? Same rules. Trying to get my attention so you can unmute yourself and tell us all about it. Okay. Couple of club announcements before we begin tonight's program. We had a great response to the website survey about which logging programs you use. That survey will be open through January 17th, so if you haven't had a chance to respond, please do so. After that, we will publish the results of that survey on the club website. The next survey will be about tonight's presentation. Our club is supported by dues and monetary donations, but primarily by proceeds from the sale of donated equipment. Much of that equipment is sold at the auction. However, since the auction, we've been running an online sale of items not sold and blessed with offers of equipment from not one but two nearly complete stations. That's great news. However, it does present a challenge. That challenge is receiving those items, photographing and cataloging them, and arranging them in the storage locker. And then when they're sold, distributing them to the new owners. For that, we need a team of volunteers. Please consider doing this. To volunteer, please contact Udo Koch, Alwyn Bruner, Ellie Goldman, or me, and thank you in advance for doing so. Tonight's presentation is by Flex Radio's Mike Walker, VA3MW. He will be introducing the Aurora, Flex Radio's newest innovation, a compact all-in-one 500-watt HF 6-meter SDR transceiver. This is new technology like no other. He will tell us what happens under the covers. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. How's everybody tonight? And bear with me for a second while I get my screen playing correctly. Yeah, share sound. Share. All right, how's that work? Everybody see the first slide?
Looks good.
Yep. Good.
Good. Well, thank you for having me, gentlemen. And I don't know if there's any YLs and YLs, if there are any. And,
oh yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
Thanks for your presentation, Mike. Looking forward to it.
You're welcome. And a little bit about me. I've been a ham for not very long, but 51 years. Still learning new things, still trying new stuff, still have some firsts. Come a long way from, hey, thanks, you're my first HF contact, to, you were my first moon bounce contact on UHF sort of things. And it's just amazing hobby. It's been a very good hobby for me. I'm in Toronto, and so I'm an hour ahead of you guys. And sorry for the dark lighting. I'm sitting in a hotel room tonight, so it's not my normal setup. And so we'll get going. And if you're new to, never heard of Flex Radio is a HF radio vendor. We make a 100-watt, 160 through to 6 meters HF radios. Current product line is called the 8000 series. And there's about, we think there's about 15,000 radios out there in the amateur world. So we've done very well. It's a small company out of Texas, at least on the amateur side. Everything's built in Texas. The software's all done in the US. We have an office in Texas, another one in Minnesota. And people sort of scattered all over North America. I don't think we have anybody outside of North America. There's just two of us in Canada. And that does present a few issues. I can't go in the office anymore because we have a whole government world there. And I can't go in without supervision, including trips to the washroom. So that's pretty entertaining. But anyway, without further ado, as they say, let's see if my slide change goes. There we go. Back in May of 2025, Flex Radio introduced a new HF radio called Aurora, and I'm going to give you a lot more detail about it in a minute. But there's a couple of reasons we came up with the Aurora radio. And while I can't see all the people, maybe you can comment, or actually, well, I'll look for where I can see. If you've been an HF operator, you've noticed probably over the last 15 or 20 years that the urban noise floor has been rising. It's up to probably 20 dB. I started to notice it here in Toronto back about 2000. And this noise floor has sort of been the elephant in the room. Over the years, the last 15 years or 20 years, the radio manufacturers have done so much to focus on receiver performance. And we pretty much maxed that out where none of us have a quiet enough noise floor where the receiver sort of runs out of gain. You know, we used to buy radios based on radio sensitivity. That's now not the case. We still buy radios based on radio selectivity. But back to the noise floor, RSGB, Fokkers and Leffering out of the Netherlands and other clubs and whatever have done studies. And yes, the noise floor is up about 10 to 20 dB. So this is why we needed a 500 watt radio. And this is why 100 watts is no longer enough power in most HF operations, because we just need, well, we need more power to get over that noise floor. And we used to say that, you know, if you can't hear them, you can't work them. But now it's, you know, if they can't hear you, they can't work you. So a few extra decibels of transmitter power is what we need to go. Now, I don't know, most HF operators today are running some sort of amplifier from 500 watts up to 1500 watts. And we're going to talk to you a bit about what if we could have built an HF radio, which we did, that could be, how simple could it be? How big would it be? What would it weigh? How could you carry it? How could you cool it and reject all the heat? And of course, the key thing is, what would it cost? And we did. We jammed that in the same box as our Flex 8000 radios. And I know people that if you've been an amateur for quite a while, I'm sure you're sitting there going in the back of your head, how noisy is that sucker? You know, because you're going to move a lot of air through that to cool it at 500 watts, right? And no, we didn't water cool it. So let's do a little history on how we got to 500 watts or even 1500 watts. But today, if you wanted a 100 watt radio, you could buy one of our Flex 8000 series. You'd have to add that 12 volt power supply to that. And that gives you 100 watts. It weighs about 16 pounds. Remember that number. It takes about 250 watts of input power to drive and to operate that radio. You're wasting 150 watts of that in heat to get your 100 watts out, and you're going to spend more than 2,500 US on that. I have to say that because I'm a Canadian, so we always talk about it that way. So what if we wanted to go to 500 watts? Well, if you were to take something like an Elecraft KPA 500 and its adjacent companion, Cat 500, nice setup, one of our radios and the power supply, you're now, believe it or not, up to something that weighs about 47 pounds. And I know that number to be correct because I used to own that amplifier. Takes about 1,350 watts to power all that. And you're going to get 500 watts out and waste 800 watts of that heat, which is nice, as we used to say, for heating up the ham shack. And that's going to cost you, if you were starting brand new today, about $7,000. Okay, for yucks, we wanted to go to 1,500 watts. We've got the radio, the power supply, and the amplifier and the tuner. That's up to about 76 pounds. So now you need a friend to get it anywhere you want to move it. Takes 3,300 watts of AC power to boost your 1,500 watts output, and you're wasting 1,800 watts in heat. That's going to cost you a lot of money. Now, we all probably have that much invested in our station anyway, but we use the clean slate as a comparison. You know, if you think about that, your radio in your ham shack in the HF world is much better at producing heat than it is producing RF power. Let's go down another path, and you'll see the story here. Let's assume you had 100 watts and you're talking to another station at S1. I'm going to use S1, S2, and S3 only because it makes the math easier and it's easier to explain. Well, the 100 watts gets you S1. If you want to get that signal to S2, you need 500 watts. If you want to get that signal to S3, you need 1,500 watts. And that's because each S unit is 6 dB increase in power, or a 4 times increase, roughly. And if you can do this math in your head, so 100 to 500 is 100 to 200, that's the first 3 dB, and then of course 200 to 400 is the second 3 dB. That takes you to a total of 6. That would get you the S2, and you got a couple of 100 watts left over. So the key point here is 500 watts gets you the most benefit rather than 1500 watts, but it also gets you something that's a lot less price and a lot less electrical demand. So why do most people choose 500 watts? Well, it's the sweet spot. It's the first 500 watts that really count. And because of that 6 dB increase, the jump really gets to be expensive. And each S unit, from S1 to S2 or S2 to S3, is far more expensive to produce. And to put this in perspective, let's say you had a 100 milliwatt signal and you wanted to get that, or a 1 milliwatt signal, and you wanted to get that to 100 milliwatts. That's a 20 dB increase, which is about 3 S units. And you could do that with a $5 part. And wouldn't that be nice if we could do that with a $5 part, 100 watts? So what can I buy off the shelf today? Well, a little touch on my Yaesu and ICOM friends. These two radios are available today. The ICOM 7760, which I know fairly well, it weighs about 40 pounds. And it costs, I think the number is about $7,100 on the last time I checked at DX Engineering. And that gets you half an S unit increase, 100 watts to 200 watts. That's all. Number sounds good, gets you half an S unit. And I think the FTDX is a little less money, but the same story. It's a 200 watt radio. And by the way, the ICOM 7760 at $7,000, remember that price, because it's more than our 500 watt radio. And here's a sort of example of what it looks like. You would have a Flex software-defined radio, a Cat 500 tuner, a KPA 500 watt amplifier, a power supply that's not in this picture, and a nice LP 100 watt meter on top, so you make sure you're developing all that power. So in May of 25, we announced Aurora at Dayton Hamvention, and this is the commercial we played for them. So this is Aurora. It comes in two models. And if you're not familiar with Flex Radio, we're pretty good about making things very clean and easy to use. The user interface is fairly structured. And to put it in perspective, that's an Aurora 510M model. The M has that front panel we call a Maestro front panel. If you take a radio like a Yaesu FTDX 5000, I'm going to ask a question, and you're going to have to get to your keyboard and type this into the chat windows so I can see your answers. How many buttons or knobs do you think are on the front of a Yaesu FTDX 5000? See if I can bring up the chat window now. Okay, 35, 18. And Dan, the radio in the M model does not require any Windows software unless you're doing digital modes. But that's normal for any HF radio. We got a couple answers. 18, 200. All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to sort of say the closest answer is. Anybody else typing? Marty. It's 118 buttons or knobs with multiple levels of shift in 6-point font that you need a flashlight and a magnifying glass to go read. So please don't tell me our radios are too complicated. It's quite funny. And I'm not kidding. I counted it about 4 times and I came up with the number. So it was a good question there. Do we run on Windows? Yeah, the client software runs on Windows, which you need for the radio on the right, and you can also use on the radio on the left if you choose. And the advantage of that, by the way, is I'm not stuck staring at some small 8-inch screen. I can use my nice, 38-inch high def screen with my logging program right beside it. I can have a VFO knob on the desk. If you have any flex converts, they probably given you a hard time about that. They're not wrong. And none of us are getting any younger, so I don't necessarily need the squinty reading glasses all the time to operate the radio. And I have a whole other talk just on the integration and things you can do with the radio. So this is the 500-watt Aurora. You know what? We tossed the 12-volt power supply. Why? Do we need it? No. If anybody this century actually needed their radio to run on 12 volts, absolutely had to. Dan, there is a Mac client. We don't sell it, somebody else does. And there is I'll just answer questions so they pop up. There is a open source API. You can develop your own client to your heart's content. It's wide open and we publish it. Anyway, so the radio runs on 120. It's got built-in bandpass tuner. It's got an antenna tuner. What's called the 520 model is an out-of-the-box SO2R radio for contesters. Like it's literally drop it down, hook up 2 antennas. You can do SO2R with N1mm type of thing. It's truly about as plug and play as it comes. I can set up a contest SO2R station in under 5 minutes and type of thing. It is an HF transceiver. It's a transceiver. It's not an amplifier. It's 80 to 90% power efficient. It's not a power amplifier, and it's a totally integrated solution. And if you know our 6 and 8000 series, this is what they look like. That item to the right is the heat sink, which is our 100-watt heat sink for our traditional radios. It's about 6 inches by 6 inches by an inch thick with a fan cooling it down. We run our 500-watt amplifier on top of that heat sink. It's the exact same heat sink. Still wondering how we did it, right? Mm. It's that pallet you see there is about 6 inches by 6 inches by 6. You'll see the heat sink on the bottom. The bottom first thing is the power amplifier at 500 watts. The middle one's the bandpass filters, and the upper one's the tuner. Literally, if you can see, I know it's a little dark here, it's about this big. Little thing about flex radio models. So every radio has something called a spectral capture unit or an SCU, and that's the part that the antennas connect to for receiving and transmitting, and it's the A to D, the DAC. Okay, that's the A to D converter that converts the analog signals into digital, the digital signals into analog. Some radios have 1 and some have 2. And when you have 2, it behaves like 2 radios, and you can take multiple receivers, which we call slices, and use them on either antenna port. Doesn't matter. It's quite accommodating. And then the M model is, as you saw earlier, the one with the front panel. So here's the classic comparison chart at a high level. You'll notice that the 1 SCU units, the 510 series, come with only with 2 slices. Or receivers that you can put anywhere in the spectrum at any time. They don't have to be within like 100 kilohertz of each other, anywhere between 30 kilohertz and 54 megahertz. They have RX receiver pre-selectors, antenna tuners, a GNSS, which is a GPS-like device for frequency stability, which is worst case scenario, half a hertz at 50 megahertz or better. They unfortunately do not do Mars because of the very specialized tank circuits for each band. Now, if you wanted to do this before at 500 watts, you go back in time to the 50s and you could put a Collins KWS1 in line with a 75A4, a KWM1. It'd cost you about $2,800 US in 1957 dollars. That's about $32,000 today. And it only weighs 245 pounds, so you'd have to go get the pickup truck. And I'm not sure if we have any Flex Radio customers here, but it's built on the same 8000 platform and the 6000 platform. In fact, it is an 8000 on the receiver side. It has the full transverter support and SO2R, and they all come with adaptive pre-distortion. We call that smart signal. So what's it really mean? We get 500 watts of RF power. We fit it in one light package that only weighs, ready for it, 18 pounds. And by the way, I have picked up an ICOM 7760, and it is 40 pounds. Because it fits in a smaller package and is less parts count, we can obviously build these a little bit cheaper, lower cost, and it's an amazing performer. All right, big question for Eric. How did we do it? Well, back in 2019, Tony Brock Fisher, Kilo 1 Kilo Papa, visited us at Dayton. And he met with ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, Flex Radio, and Elecraft. And he had this technology that he wanted to partner with to build the radio. Everybody turned him down, but Steve Hicks, our CTO, N5AC, saw it immediately, and he was all gaga about it. But yes, we have to go do this. And that started in, just at the beginning of COVID. Well, COVID was more like a year later, but you get the idea. That's when we started doing this. And by the way, Tony came up with this idea organically. But as he did some research, he found out he's not the first person to come up with this method. There's Tony standing on Polar Lane. I think they took this picture in Austin.
Yeah.
And the actual technology is called envelope elimination and restoration. And it's taken me about 11 presentations to say that without stumbling over it. It was actually found out or developed by Leonard Kahn back in 1952. And you can Google the story. It's not new. It is used today in the commercial world for specialized transmitter functions and services when they're just on, small bandwidth. But imagers are really tough on HF equipment because we want it to work through the entire HF radio spectrum. You can go read more about it in his article. He called it Polar Explorer, and it's in QEX March, April 2017. From a timeline, this is his timeline starting back in 2015. I think he had the first vision around 2013. He built a working 40-watt model back in 2015. He did a all-band 500-watt model in 2017. And of course, 2019, he met with us and we announced this in 2025. And I'll be the first to admit, by the way, we're not the first people to bring an HF radio that uses this technology to market. Hans did from QRP Labs at the 5-watt level. He did his math is totally different, but very smart guy. I call him a friend because I've worked with him many times. Very funny guy as well, and his own genius. This is Tony's lab in New Hampshire. I visited it last August, and over here you can see this pile of wires and jumpers and everything, and that's an Aurora radio that he's always working on. And he's got, I think it was pretty funny, he had a whole bunch of jumper leads held in place with wooden close pegs. And by the way, Tony does have serial number 001, which is nice. All right, how did we do it? We use Class D modulation. And you're going, wait a minute, that doesn't work on sideband. Works fine on CW, right? RTTY, probably FT8, not PSK31, would work on FM. But so how do you do it? Well, you start out with your typical amplitude and control signals. You feed them into a digital signal processor, and you split them out into an amplitude component and a phase component, and then you amplify the crap out of them in Class D, which makes them horrifically efficient. You then reassemble the signal and you put it out on the air. And that's how we did it, Eric. And just to show how well we did it, this is the presentation we had in Dayton. We've got the radio on the right. We've got a heatsink we have the radio on the left, the heatsink on the right. That heatsink, by the way, even though it says danger, hot, do not touch, people touched it. So I'm going to put a sign on it next year. It says danger, wet paint. I think it's be safer of not being touched. And how hot does that get after an hour? And by the way, we're talking 100% duty cycle, key down, 8 hours straight. The heatsink, the dummy load gets up to about 91 Celsius or 200 Fahrenheit. And the radio, the hottest part of the radio is about 37 Celsius. Udo asked about the power supply. That's the hottest point. It's actually, Udo, it runs at 96 volts. There's two 48 volt meanwhile power supplies in there in series. That's how we get our 96 volts. I run RTTY with this 2 weekends ago. I haven't run remote, and my station air temperature where I run remote, it was cold. The water was frozen. It was about 4 Celsius. I could not get the PA any hotter than 5 Celsius at 500 watts of RTTY. And I try to break things, and I can't. I've set off every alarm in this radio. It's just beautifully recovered. So I have this video. I did it with FT8 because everybody sort of gets it, but I want you to watch the right-hand side where we have multiple meters that I read them off the network because the radio plugs in the network, and I built this nice little Node Red screen. It's going to show you the power amplifier temperature. And on this radio, we had thermal piles on each of the PAs just to see if one was getting hotter than the other.
I have a demonstration here of a Flex Aurora radio running full power in FT8. This is going to be a 500 watt demonstration. It's going to be on 40 meters, but it's not on the air and going into a dummy load. Please don't do this live. You won't make any friends. We don't want you running 500 watts of FT8 power. But let's have a look. I'm going to start it going here, and the radio will go into transmit in about 8 seconds. Over here on the right, we have some diagnostic telemetry here. The PA temperature is the temperature of the heat sink. It's at 5 Celsius. We'll see it rising. We'll see we're running just over 500 watts of power. And then because this is a early production test radio, we have some extra diagnostics. We can see the temperatures of the actual power transistors. Now we've been through one cycle, and you'll notice we only got a few degrees above the air temperature, which happens to be about 5 or 6 Celsius because this radio is actually a live radio at my remote site. But you'll see even after 2 cycles, the power transistors do not get very hot. In fact, at 500 watts of power, you could still put your fingers on these and they're still not going to be very warm. There's a 5-degree rise in the power transistor over the heatsink. Just incredibly efficient. We'll only do a few more of these, but just for you to get the idea that how cold as a cucumber the Aurora radio runs when running FT8. And we've always been worried about constant carrier modes in our traditional radios that run in Class A mode. The Aurora radio has none of those issues.
Pretty cool. So in a typical 500 watt setup, it looks like this with an amplifier, tuner, and whatever. The other thing to consider too is every cable on the back of your radio today is actually an antenna, and they can all contribute to receive noise floor. And we've now learned that the proper care and feeding of your HF station is to choke all those cables. We pick up noise from switching chargers from our cell phones. The worst offenders are everybody here leave their drill battery charger plugged in 100% of the time. You might want to go consider unplugging it. They are great noise generators. type of thing. And I'm not kidding. And none of this would phase us because it's just sort of typical what we'd see at field day. I actually took this at Surfside last when was that? February, I guess, or May. Forgot which month. Anyway, when you set up your Aurora radio, it looks like this, and it would just have a watt meter on top. Plugs into the AC. Like I said, we got rid of the 12-volt power supply. Really not needed anymore. We would hook up the only thing missing from this was hooking up a microphone, nice and clean. All right, believe it or not, yes, you could take your Aurora, do a poto activation running on power pack like a Jackery. I think they did the math on that at about, you still get about 6 hours of operating on a 1,000-watt unit. I've got some numbers coming up that are really impressive. Heck, if I was camping and at a campground that had AC power, I'd just be plugging it in. The power, you won't even, it's not, the draw is so little. And Eric, to answer your question, how did the engineers get the heat down? Well, we never generated it in the first place. Imagine if Scarborough Reef had such a device. And this has been the real thing we've seen is that the expeditioners now are all over this because of all the right reasons. They usually go with 500 watts. Their biggest expense is fuel, the weight of the fuel, and the space the fuel and the amplifiers take up. So if you can use a lot less fuel for your generator, if you don't need the amplifier, and your radio only weighs 18 pounds, you're saving a fortune in transportation charges. Imagine with Beauvais coming up, they're going to use a helicopter. Every ounce counts. Sable Islands coming up in March, they're using Aurora radios because they have to helicopter everything onto the island. And it makes a really handy QRO remote, and that's what I'm using today. Single box. I have some tricks to turn it on and off. Here I was using, I was in a hotel in Winnipeg, and it's like just sitting in front of the shack. I used to be a road warrior in the software world. I was out every other week. And I carried my Flex Maestro, which was this big, with me everywhere because you can only eat so many clubhouse sandwiches in a hotel every night of the week or go to so many movies or walk around Fry's trying to see what's going on. So a few highlights. It draws 6 amps at 500 watts at 120 volts. So you don't need any shack special wiring anymore. It draws 1.3 amps at 100 watts at 120 volts. I often operate mine only at 100. I have the advantage of being in a very quiet location. It sits on that 100-watt heatsink. There's little or no fan noise, so it's very quiet. It's because it runs adaptive pre-distortion and we have full control over the transmitter envelope. The spectral purity is very good. And I think our current LMDOS amplifiers that everybody makes have a really big problem with thermal distress. And Dan N7HQ and I had a long conversation about this. And if you've ever seen an LMDOS amplifier chip, they're not very big, but they've got these really flimsy drains on them. And because everything heats up and cools down and heats up and cools down 1,000 times, the drains fracture, and that's why the amp fails. So when you see that amps fail at Elecraft or SPE or even us, don't necessarily blame the vendor. I think it's the LMDOS. So as in summary, it's a 500-watt transceiver, and you cannot use it as an amplifier for existing devices. Okay, you could. But at one point in time, you might hit it with 500 watts. And even more importantly, if you ever wanted to feed this through your 1,500-watt amplifier, you need to make sure that the amplifier in bypass mode can handle 500 watts. I almost made that mistake in my remote when I put this to replace my 8,000. And then I did some research and I found the PGXL can only handle 200 watts in bypass. So that was a good thing. I probably would have fused a few relays together. It's a total tightly coupled like DSP for the transmitter. We did DSP for the receiver. We now have DSP for the transmitter. It's a flex technology, and it's got this integrated world use 120 volt, 100 to 264 volt power supply. And the one thing I didn't mention, all the radios we have today come with controlled envelope single sideband. Anybody heard of that? It's an
Yes.
RF speech compressor, and it gives you the equivalent of another RF 3 dB RF output. My short story on that is I don't think we give you any more RF output. I think everybody else gives you 3 dB less. And I have a long talk on that, or you can Google it and go read about it. Again, there's an article on QEX regarding it. And adaptive pre-distortion is built in. And that brings us to the point where you get to see the whole crowd at Flex Radio, and I am ready to take any questions. You can drop in the chat, or you can.
I have a question or two, Mike. This is
Yep.
Marty, WD9GYM.
I'm ready.
Often the instructions during updates require you to do a cold boot, which at some point in time says pull the cables from the DC power supply. How is that done with the Aurora, or is it not required?
Well, hopefully we're past most of that. That's our support team making sure that the radio properly booted. I have mine remote. I do not have an AC power switch on my Aurora yet. However, for $27 US, you can go buy two 110 volt, 120 volt Internet of Things switches on Amazon, and you can just do it with your iPhone.
Yeah, there's lots of solutions for
There's lots of
removing the AC. During major updates, the databases seem to change. So cold restart plus a system reset is often required. Is there any plans to somehow initiate that automatically on updates or upgrades?
So most of those, oh, hang on, this battery gonna die? Oh, we got 18%. Most of those are resolved now. That was just a jump from version 3 to version 4. Some of the profiles would come in dirty and then cause some weirdness requiring you to reset the database. We don't see that as a problem moving forward. That's pretty much solved on version 4.
Okay.
Not that you're not hearing a lot about it because people slowly migrate. Yeah.
No, I'm in Florida. My radios are back in Illinois, and I can't do a system reset from here.
If you're really stuck, call support and ask them for their recommendation. They have some tricks they can do.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I have requested a way to do a remote restore. You could help me out by asking as well, because I'm remote too. I can, but
you can do a remote reset.
Yeah, there are ways to do it.
Okay.
But there's no public way to do it.
Okay. We can go offline for that then.
Okay.
With the expansion of the software development team, will updates be coming more often? Or
the next update is 4.2. It's scheduled in March.
March. Okay. And
subject to change as always, because you get close and until you get it out, you don't know if it's ready for prime time.
Right. And it's software, right?
It's software. Yep.
Yeah. Last question is that well in advance of adaptive pre-distortion coming out, you had announced that you were going to be releasing it. Is there, with the new pricing structure for additional features, is there going to be any announcements of what's coming in the way of the additional features?
We used to do that, but social media has made us really hard. It's hard to do that because we get our ass eaten all the time if we're late. So we generally don't, and it's exactly the reason that's driven it. As much as we would like to publish a roadmap, there's a lot of pressure from, again, social that makes it distracting. So we carefully make those announcements, only when we know we can do it.
Fair enough.
It's unfortunate.
Fair enough.
I have a quick question. This is Keith on 9QDS. First question. Hello. First off, what is the current consumption on receive only?
I think on 120 volts, it's about half an amp.
Half an amp. Okay. Number two, as far as you're trying to compare the Aurora with an FTDX 5000, is really not in the same league. You got to remember that that's an older radio. The new Aurora is, got FPGAs. Yes, it's lighter. Um, yes, it's not expensive. Is the FTDX 5000, but then the FTDX 5000 is older style. It's not an SDR. It's a super het, and I just and the 118 buttons. One thing that I like about that is it brings most of the functions out to the front of the panel without having to do, pressing one button and going through menus on your screen to get where you're getting. Number two, the the display even might be a little bit on the small side, but when you sit there and you can put a VGA display on the back end of it. So I think those, and you were talking about doing that with the, having a larger display. But, to compare that with that, I don't think that's a fair comparison in the days. And when you compare it against the Gold Dust Twins, I have a pair of Gold Dust Twins, and I love them. But again, you're in a different league altogether. You're not even close. And if you were to compare your Aurora, I think you should compare it to the closest thing would be like an FTDX 101 and the 7760 or the 7610. Now you're comparing apples and apples instead of apples and oranges. That's just my thought on it.
Okay, thanks for that. Edgar has a question. So that's a good question. So Edward, if you can't see the chat, Edgar's question is, what's the solution when you need 1500 watts to compete at QSO? So your 500 to 1500 watts is not even an S unit increase. And I know people say that, but I don't see it as a difference maker anymore, simply because there's so much variation in the ionosphere that can either give you that gain or lose it. What is it? So 500 is 3 dB. It's about a 4 dB increase, just over half a S unit. If you were on the air with somebody and did a comparison between 500 and 1500 watts, I doubt they'd even hear the difference. It would be so subtle. So if that's really a concern and you need to run 1500 watts, then you'll need a 1500 watt amplifier. You can run it through the amplifier, use the radio as a driver. But I know from sheer experience, there are so many times that I thought I was at 20 watts on different radios, and I then hit my Power Genius with 100. It just happens like once a month for one silly reason or another. But that's, we can't tell you how to, that you can't do it. You're certainly welcome to go do it. It was just, we're bringing it forward as something to be aware of. So, any other questions?
Hey, Mike, this is Dave, K918.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. So I've got a 6600 with a non-M, and so I've purchased the Maestro version C. And so with the version 3 software from Flex, I've had a lot of challenges, with the Maestro lagging in the display, and it's it's basically I haven't used in a few months, and I thought, well, on a lark, I'll just go up to the free version of 4. Oh my gosh, what a difference version 4 makes. You guys have fixed the memory leak or whatever the delay with the Maestro. So if you guys are struggling with the Maestro being lagging and when you're turning the VFO and not keeping up with the VFO, and so I highly recommend going to a version of version 4, even the free one. If you want to get the enhancements that are offered in version 4, by all means, purchase them. But the free version of 4 rocks.
I should mention that too. So our software is free. The Smart SDR version 4.15 is our current version. It's released. Anybody with a Flex radio can update to that version for free. There is a feature license you can purchase, but only if you want the new features. And if you get the new features, then they stay with the radio forever. So You buy the 1 year feature license, which gets you all the features released in the next 365 days. You can let that expire. Your features don't go away, and you can wait until new features come out. And they might be features you want or not want. We think it's one of the fairer methods. And in the software industry, and if you work in the software industry, you need that recurring revenue to pay your software developers, type of thing. It just has to happen that way. That's why everybody's changed to that model.
So thanks, Mike. I love the Flex again.
Thanks. Glad you got that figured out.
Yeah, Mike.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you were saying that you don't have a power supply in it. So how are you getting power to all the components, or how is that done with, or what do you do differently without the power supply?
So we don't need a power supply to power the radio. You may need some other 12-volt supply to power your peripherals, but you don't need a 25 amp power supply to power a watt meter and stuff. You just need a 2 amp power supply.
Right.
Maybe.
But I mean, there is a power supply built into the radio that
Oh yeah,
powers
yeah.
the
There's
whole
a
thing in that.
yeah.
You
There's
said
a
those
9.
two 46 or whatever it was amps in there that gets you the 96 or something.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're just two small switching power supplies. And they're quiet.
Yeah, I think if you
Anybody?
qualified it by saying internal power supply versus external power supply.
Yeah,
that
yeah, that
eliminated
makes
some-
sense.
Anybody else?
What do you use to power the receiver?
Oh, it's all built in. It comes off a 96 volt. There's a 12-volt power supply in the radio too, by the way. So there's 3 power supplies, 248s and a 12. I think there's a little bit of 12-volt power available on the back accessory connector. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked at that connector.
Does it also do general coverage receive?
Yes, 100%. 30 kilohertz to 54 megahertz.
Oh, okay, and that's with the SDR probably pulling in a big slice of spectrum, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, it actually takes, Flex Radio is the only one that does this. We bring in all 54 megahertz of spectrum. We digitize it at 16 bits. That turns into about 3.4 gigabits of information from the spectral capture unit to the next part, the field programmable gate array, the FPGA. It's a little network in there, so like two unit network, and like that's 3 gigabits. That's a big network. You think most of our home networks are 100 megabit? That's 3,000 of those.
And how is it on if you're in a contest situation where their bands are noisy in terms of receive on sideband, let's say zeroing in on a weak signal amidst strong signals and that?
Phenomenal. There was a myth years ago that software-defined radio receivers would fall apart in crowded band conditions. Actually, the opposite is true. Software-defined radios work better in crowded band conditions. And Gerald Youngblood did a talk on that at Friedrichshafen in Germany a number of years ago. You can Google that on YouTube and find that talk where he goes through it and shows the math and everything, which is, exact opposite of what those that didn't work in the industry thought. But I can copy in FT8, for example, I can copy minus 17 dB signals 50 hertz away from plus 20s. In RTTY, I can copy weak RTTY signals in the, K3LR on 40 or 80 is like local to me. And yet here I am copying little QRP RTTY stations that are maybe, 200 kilohertz away from them. Their RTTY signal. You see their signal if you do RTTY on the side of their slope and perfect print.
ICOM radios 7610 and 7300 digitize the whole band too.
Not this way.
Yes, they do. You all use pre-selectors in front to limit the signals getting in, but it digitizes the whole spectrum.
Right. Flex Radio does not use pre-selector in front unless if you go outside the band, we have pre-selector, but say you go from 40 and 20 on a single SCU, the pre-selector is removed.
Well, that sort of hurts your signal performance, large signal performance.
That's a bit of a myth. So in order to really to destroy a front end signal on a Flex radio, you sort of have to be about 90 dB over S9. I'm not making the number up. That's the number. And
Yeah.
so while the 7300, I have one, does cover the entire spectrum, it does not digitize the entire spectrum at the same time.
Well, it does really,
It's a limited bandwidth.
the sampler runs at the high frequency all the time. So it picks it all up.
Okay.
Question here from V31KC. Is there currently or will ever be an option for just adding a second screen to the radio?
Like to the M model? So the M model, then the Maestro, you can hook up a second screen, but it's a mirror of the primary screen.
Okay, so you can add a second screen without a computer.
Yep.
How many antenna inputs does the
They all have two. On the 510 model, it's an A/B switch, and on the 520 model, you can use both antennas at the same time.
Also on the Maestro, do you have, is it Wi-Fi or is it strictly Ethernet?
It's both. I highly recommend hardwiring it because Wi-Fi is evil. There's a big
Yes,
difference.
yes, I understand that. But like if I wanted to, I have the thing down in my radio room and I want to play with it up in the bedroom or something.
You'll be fine. Yeah, it's fine. I find today's Wi-Fi is, streaming is one thing because we don't care if it buffers for 20 seconds. Real-time sideband's a whole different story. So
yeah.
A good mesh is really handy. You're welcome. Yep.
Hi, this is Norm P9SS. Is this running Windows 11?
So the client software that Flex Radio provides runs on Windows 10 or 11. We only support it running on 11, which means if you have a serious problem, we're going to ask you to upgrade to 11. Doesn't mean it won't run on 10. The computer itself runs on a Linux, or the radio itself runs on Linux. The Maestro runs on Windows embedded. There are Mac clients available from Marcus DL4 MRE. And next question I always get, what about Android or Linux? We're not going to develop it, but the API is wide open. And see, Dan, I knew you were going to ask that. And time for a new wife. Anyway, so I lost my train of thought. So Linux or Android, they we're looking for others to develop it. For years, I'd said I would help out people in the Linux world. I would make radios available, but I've come to the conclusion there is nobody that's an HF operator that's a Linux developer. We won't do it just because we have so many other things to do, and we just have to hire more staff, and it would not be economically feasible.
Mike, I got a question about out-of-band operation. You said you can't really do anything on Mars. I'm on Civil Air Patrol, and I use the 6700, and I've got that file you provide for unlocking. Not available on the Aurora?
No, it's a whole different transmitter technology. So you can't because of the tank filters in the Aurora radio that are required.
Okay.
Well, it's a big question. It's asked about every presentation I do. And even commercial customers want it. So
yeah, I
we're
use
looking at other.
CIP, so I had to ask. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Mike, did you start delivering these yet? Have they been, did they make the 2025 deadline there?
Oh yeah. They started shipping in December.
Okay.
And Marty's right. The demo from Steve, whose call sign I can't remember, on Linux looks pretty cool. He's having the devil's in the details, as they say.
And Flex makes a lot of radios for the military, do they? Or they have a commercial side, or what do they do on that end of things? And are they different designs than the ham radio product?
They are based on our amateur technology. The amateur tends to be the lead to get the commercial world involved. There's more staff on the commercial world. They are, in some cases, very similar to our 8000 design, but in a lot of cases, they are totally different. designs. Like we've done one for drones. We have been building high power amplifiers too. So if you're interested in any of that, you can send an email to commercial@flexradio.com. Interestingly enough, all our commercial business generally comes from hams that work for big commercial companies, which is nice.
Is there a lot of competition in the ham radio world in terms of making new radios and selling them, I guess, because everybody seems to come out with all these things?
It's hard to be profitable now. ICOM came out with the 7300. They sold about 100,000 the first time. The Mark II came out. They can probably sell another 100,000. But
Wow.
ICOM's is a company supported by a lot of land mobile and marine and avionics and other worlds aircraft, so that helps them. Kenwood in the HF world has pretty much disappeared since JVC bought them, and Yaesu's been around. I don't know what it cost us to build Aurora, but I wouldn't be surprised if we blew through $5 million.
Really? Wow.
Used to say it was $1 million, but by the time you develop and stuff, staff like to get paid. That's a funny thing about that.
Yeah.
Real quick, Keith here again. You got your commercial line, you got your amateur line. Now, so did Stepper IR. They had a commercial and they had an amateur. Now, the amateur went away, and all they do now is the commercial. Just your thought process and about sticking around in the amateur market, even though I know, the commercial market is probably where you're making all your money. But just your thoughts on that potentially happening, like Stepper IR.
No, I don't think so. Stepper is a whole different world because of the very limited antenna farms. I know the guys at Stepper, and even their amateur, they just stopped marketing amateur. It doesn't mean the amateur stuff stopped working. And I guess the problem with their stuff, it was so good it never failed. Like mine never does. I still have a 3-element up, and it's been up for 25 years. But some of that challenge has come too is that the amateurs of today, the ones under 50, and I'm not trying to divide the world here, do not put up HF antennas like we used to. They're running wires, they're running end-fed half waves, they're doing FT8, so they can do FT8 because they can get away with compromised antennas. The hobby's changed that way, so I don't think that's a fair comparison. We've come up with a radio that is much more versatile than the classic HF beam. So we have no intention of the amateur world going away. In fact, because like I said earlier, it's the leader for a lot of our commercial stuff.
And yes, I don't know where you live, but I'm sure you're in a warmer climate than we are up here in the Midwest. But in up here in the Midwest, I had a stepper and it failed because of ice buildup and such. And I also know of other people that have failures. And again, it might be a geographic deal where there's failures. But anyway, enough said on that.
My remote station is at almost 45 degrees north latitude. It lives in a boathouse that's frozen right now with about 3.5 feet of ice. My stepper's out there, and last March I saw it with 2 inches of ice on it. It took us all summer to clean out the tree damage. So yeah, I understand you're cold, and I don't heat my radios. The box all this stuff's in is just. It used to stay warmer with my Flex 8000, but now the box is sitting at just above freezing, about 2 Celsius when I looked this morning. But pretty resilient.
Okay. Myself, I have to run an air conditioner in the winter because I got all the big boat anchors that generate a lot of heat and it warms up the shack. But that's another story.
That's another story. Okay, gentlemen and ladies, anything else?
Yeah, this Norb K9SS. Who owns Flex Radio?
The Flex Radio was developed by Gerald Youngblood, sometimes called the father of SDR. He has stepped down as the CEO, and His son, Matt Youngblood, has taken over the company.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate
You're welcome.
all the information.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, Mike. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. 7-3. Maybe we'll see some of you on the air. Go work some
Thanks,
good
Mike. That
DX
was
and showing
nice.
it. All right. Oh, if you need to reach me, by the way, you can send me an email at that was briefly on the slide. Quite easy. Mike@flexradio.com if you have any further questions. And it's Victor Alpha 3 Mike Whiskey. 7-3.
Have a good one, Mike.
73, Mike. Just a quick
Mike.
last reminder for everyone tonight that just like tonight, the February meeting will be held only on Zoom, not at Heller. But in March, we'll resume the in-person meetings at Heller with the accompanying Zoom hybrid meeting. My favorite part of the evening. With that, I'd like to say,
Was John going to talk about Winter Field Day?
John, did you want to talk about it tonight, or would you want to wait until February?
No, I'll do that tonight because February Winter Field Day will be over with.
That's true. John, why don't you go ahead and take the floor? You're right.
So
Thanks,
I just want to remind everybody, and it's on the front page of our website. The 415 is inviting everybody to our Winter Field Day. It takes place on January 24th and January 25th. If you go to our website, Udo is kind enough to put the Winter Field Day as the first article on the website, and all of the sign-up information is right there. And even if you don't want to operate, come on down and have a good time.
Hey, another thing, February speaker is Rob Sherwood. Sure most people know his name, so look forward to that one.
And everybody, don't forget to fill out the survey, which will be sent out very soon, about the presentation tonight.
Where do the flexes fit on Sherwood's list? I don't know that I know where they are on there. Yes, we'll ask it.
Yeah, you have to ask him.
You said the Bob.
Still, you're making me sick, motion sick.
You said the Bob Sherwood presentation. Did I catch that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Is that going to be the February? Okay,
Yep.
is that February?
Yes.
Okay.
It's on the website. All the whole year's worth of stuff except for December's out there.
Yeah, it just helps if I look at it.
All right, gentlemen, I think we've pretty well beat everything to death tonight. Thank you all, and 73, and I think we'll close the meeting now. Thanks again for everyone. We'll see you Saturdays, and we'll see you in February.